things are getting a little strange in your world, a little wonky in terms of technology, communication with friends, family, coworkers. There's a astrological reason for that. And we're going to talk to somebody who knows all about that very well, as a matter of fact, and a lot of other things that affect you astrologically. And she is so plugged into all of this as a psychological astrologer. Carmen Turner-Schott is back with us. Welcome, Carmen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. So let's reveal for everybody that we barely got on here because you had some video tech issues, and
Yes,
we're kind of believing that that is because the Mercury retrograde is about to begin literally within a week and change.
that's right. That's right. I always am very affected by Mercury retrograde about a week or two before it actually is retrograde. We call that like the shadow period. And every month, every time this happens, I have to laugh because all of a sudden my video wouldn't work and it said it was on, and you're my witness, and then
Yeah.
miss phone calls, computers, technology start acting crazy, miscommunication, people getting times mixed up, maybe meetings, all kinds of things. So it's already affecting me and maybe you too, because we're Virgos and we're ruled by Mercury. So that's our ruling energy that affects our life, is communication and technology and all this. So Virgos and Geminis are both ruled by Mercury. So they tend to feel Mercury retrograde a lot more strongly than other signs. So
Hmm.
they'll notice it more because things are out of whack. It's just like,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I've witnessed it over decades, and I heard about it from
yeah,
others that do what you do in the metaphysical world, and I was like, whatever. And then I started paying attention to it. And then I
sure.
would look and I'd say, why is this happening now during this 3 week period? Why didn't it happen then? What is going
Yes.
on? And the only explanation I have is the retrograde. What does it
Yeah.
mean? Double check your emails, your texts before you send them.
Yes.
Is that what you really wanted to say? How's it going to be taken to, by the other person? And
Sure.
back up your data and just check and double check they're your best
Yeah.
friends. What you just mentioned before in terms of Gemini and Virgo, both being ruled by Mercury, are they compatible signs?
Yes, they actually, one Virgo's Earth, and so they're known to be more practical,
Sure.
more, grounded. And then Gemini is an air sign, so they're known to be more intellectual, more in their mind, thinkers. But yes, I always click with Geminis as far as communication goes. Now, as far as friendship, work, we communicate really well on the same kind of mental level. Sarcastic, witty. We like Virgos like Gemini's sense of humor, and so they make us laugh. And they're very social, so they're a little bit more outgoing than Virgo. Virgo's a little bit more shy. Because we're
Yes.
Earth, and Geminis are kind of larger than life, and they make you laugh, and they're kind of boisterous and loud, and like to talk. They love to talk, which we like because it brings us out of our shell. Because we like to talk too, but we're a little bit more shy and private and quiet till someone brings us out of our shell. And so, yeah, I find it's a good match for friendship. Now, for love and relationships, it can be a little challenging unless we have a lot of air or some other placements in our chart that show that Gemini would be a good match for Virgo, because it's traditionally earth signs go well with earth signs as far as relationships, and earth and water go well together, as far as
Hmm.
partnership. As far as compatibility, we look at earth and earth and earth and water. Then fire and air signs go well together, air and air, fire and fire, etc.
Yeah, in my experience, I can just say that being a Virgo,
Mm-hmm.
Gemini, in terms of compatibility, looks okay on the surface, but in my experience,
Mm-hmm. No.
no, no. And
No.
and and honestly, based on my experience, and everybody's different,
Sure.
and every Gemini is different, I wouldn't trust them.
Well, I have to
That's
say
my
this.
yeah.
This is the thing with Gemini, is that they always say it's hard for them to keep a secret. And I've met a lot of them, and they're like, just don't tell me something if you don't want me to repeat it, because I will repeat it. So they're known to be a little bit of a gossip, which, Virgos, we're very private. And
Mm,
so if
yeah.
we tell someone something, we don't want it repeated, and we really need someone that can keep our confidence. So I know if I tell a Gemini friend something, that they're probably going to tell other people. That's just, it's one of the things, they can't really not share things. It's hard for them.
Wow.
So I know this.
I'll have to think about that. I have to think about that and keeping the secret. But
Yeah,
you're spot on in terms of Virgos being a little more, yeah, private, slightly reserved, where Geminis are very much more
yeah,
social.
yes,
Let things roll off their shoulder easily, where
yeah,
Virgos don't. And that could be, the good, the yin and the yang there. That might
sure,
work and
sure,
complement each other. But all right, so
sure.
let's move into your book, which
Yes,
is not just for Geminis and Virgos, it's
no,
for every sign.
yes. My newest book is Phoenixes and Angels, Mastering the 8th and 12th Astrological Houses. And so it's really a book about people that have spiritual unexplained experiences, number one. And that's what got me researching these two specific houses, which are in a birth chart. They represent areas of life. And to me, the 12th and 8th houses are the most spiritual houses in our personality chart. And so, depending on your birth chart, everyone has an 8th and 12th house. So, some people have planets there, some don't. But anyone that has planets in those two houses, they're born with unexplained experiences. And there's different patterns that I've researched for 30 years. And so I started collecting client stories
Hmm.
and my own experience. I mean, what really got me into astrology was the fact that I would dream things that would happen, and no one in my life could explain that to me, and I felt very alone. I felt very different from everyone around me and my family, and so I wanted to know, why am I this way? And I started researching, and I figured it out. It was that I had planets in the 12th and 8th houses, and that's one of the patterns of energy that happens with, I call 12th house people, or people that have a lot of Pisces. If you're a Pisces sun, moon, Pisces rising, Pisces rules the 12th house. So you're going to have the similar kind of experiences. It's spirituality, mysticism, meditation, escapism, all these different intuitive and empathic abilities is number one. One of the patterns is they're very empathic, and they lack boundaries between themselves and others. So they absorb everything going on in their environment. And when you're young, you can imagine being a child or being little in a room in school where you're feeling everybody's thoughts and emotions, and you don't understand it because no one's ever taught you, what intuition is or how to have boundaries, right? So as you get older, 12th house people have to learn to have strong boundaries because they absorb everything around them and take on other people's energy. So they're very good psychologists, counselors, because they attract people that have problems. And most of them tell me from a young age, everyone would come to them and tell them everything, all their secrets, right? And they become the natural healer and kind of a good listener for people's problems. And so that's one of the patterns, is that they help people. They draw people that have pain and things to talk about. And the other thing, another pattern, is that they dream things. So many of them have shared with me that they dreamed about loved ones passing away. They dreamed exactly what was going to happen, and the next day it would happen. And I realized, wow, I'm not alone. There, people that have planets in this house and have a lot of Pisces are just like me, and they're all over the world. And now I've connected with them, and I share a lot of their stories in my book, Phoenixes and Angels. And I call 12th house people angels because they do feel very different. And that's the third pattern. They feel like they're alien. They tell me that they just didn't fit in with their family, or they just were so different from their friends, and because they felt things, they were very sensitive to people, and very get their feelings hurt easily, right? Because they lack those boundaries. And so they always tell me they thought they were adopted. I've had at least 100 people tell me when they were little that they asked their mom and dad if they were adopted, and they're like, no, you're not adopted. But they kind of felt like they were so different than their parents. And so that's another pattern that I see. And
Hmm.
also secrets, a very secretive love nature. A lot of times they hide their feelings and they don't share with people what they really feel. So it's the house of secret love affairs. So they may never act on these secret love of feelings that they have, but they often fall in love with people that they can't be with. This is kind of another pattern I see with planets in the 12th house.
Okay, so We're talking about the 12th house right now.
Yes, and Pisces people too. Pisces, sun, moon, or rising. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. For anybody that is fairly new to this, they wouldn't know where they fit unless they had a chart done.
Yes, they can go to astro.com, this Arkerman, or any online site. You can also go to my website, carmenturnerschott.com, and I'll email you and get a free birth chart as well if you want to. And I can let you know if you have 12th house planets. But all you need is to know if you have planets in this house is your month, date, and year of birth, your exact time of birth, AM or PM, as close as you can get. The time is very important because it'll change the planets in the houses, right? It'll shift them if we don't have an accurate time. And then place of birth, city, state, country. And you can that'll be the map of your soul. That'll be your birth chart. And you'll be able to see if you have a lot of Pisces planets or if you have any planets in this area of life, this 12th house.
Would you say the 8th and the 12th are like the most important out of all the houses?
Yes, to me, they are the most important houses because they're the houses of spirituality. They're the houses of connecting to a higher power. They're the houses of intuition, serving others, helping people, healing, rebirth, transformation, growth, resiliency, power. 8th house is all about death, rebirth, sexuality, transformation, energy, healing, resiliency, overcoming obstacles. The 8th house is a powerful house, and the 12th house is more mystical. It's about psychic abilities, intuition, dreams, escaping, connecting to a spiritual path. Both of these houses are very common, and people that have planets in both of these houses are typically drawn to each other too. I call 8th housers phoenixes and 12th housers angels, and they tend to be, when you meet someone and you just are so attracted and drawn to them, it's like you click. Typically, that's because you have planets in the 8th or 12th, or you're a 12th house or they're an 8th house, or vice versa. And there's just this natural chemistry that we have, with people that have planets in those houses, especially if we have them. And so that's some of my research too. There's like an unexplained bond, and you're like, it's like I've known you forever, and you have a lot in common because it's energy, it's similar experiences, right? It's similar personality traits.
You don't hear a lot about the 8th and 12th. And is that why you focused on it with your book?
Yes. I really, when I first started out, 1990, it was like 1993, there were no books on the 12th house or 8th house. Though, I couldn't find much. There's maybe one or two out there now, even. I mean, all these years. So I wanted to write something that was very practical because I try to make astrology very practical and basic. And so I've worked a lot with trauma survivors in my normal career, children, adults, teens that have had some type of trauma. Could be the loss of a parent. It could be, PTSD. It could be witnessing something traumatic or having something traumatic happen. Or just, we have trauma can affect us in many ways. Something that's traumatic to one person might not be for another, right? Everyone reacts to life situations differently. And so I really researched a lot about trauma and healing. And I found that people that have 8th house planets specifically experience trauma. And they also become wounded healers. They become a phoenix that kind of rises from the ashes, a stronger person. And then they go out and they are able to help people in a crisis, right? They're really good in crisis intervention, like EMTs, emergency docs, clinical social workers that are doing home visits, natural disasters, all of those kind of things where you're helping people in a very traumatic time. They're gifted at that. 8th house people naturally are good at that. And they'll often go into law enforcement, medicine, all these different career fields, psychology, where they can help people heal from very traumatic things, because the 8th house is taboo. It's everything that most people don't like to talk about and feel very uncomfortable with. So if you think about Scorpio, rules the 8th house. Scorpio is associated with sexuality and death and rebirth. Most people don't want to talk about death, right? And I remember, being little, and I asked, what happens when I die? And no one could answer me. And people I've met, children that I've helped with a lot of 8th house planets, their parents didn't know what to do because they were waking up at night and they were seeing someone at the foot of their bed, or they were asking about what happens when I die, and the parents didn't want to talk about that, because it's taboo, and these kids are naturally connected to death, and they're naturally curious about their soul. Yeah, they're smart. They're like little wise souls, right? And so if you have, it's important for parents to also do charts for their children, so what those gifts that your children might have, and some of these energies and these questions they have, there's usually a reason, and you can see it in their chart. And I've helped a lot of parents that had children with these placements in the 8th and 12th. And once we got to the root of it, one story I tell is a little boy was seeing his grandfather, and he had never met him because his mother's dad had died before he was born. And his mother, I came to their home and everything. This was many years ago, and I did his chart and I helped her. It was through a family friend asked me to go do his chart. And I started talking to him, and he was drawing cemeteries and all this stuff, and she was scared. Like, why? Well, come to find out, she showed him a picture of her father. Says, that's who's in my room. So he was seeing a ghost of his grandfather. And once they got to the root of it, he wasn't afraid anymore. He used to be afraid of the dark. He had to have the light on. This is very typical for people with planets in these houses, because they're very imaginative. They dream, they sleepwalk, right? They dream vivid. They wake their parents up at night because they're scared, right? And so these are just similar stories that thousands of people from all over the world have shared with me. And so I wanted to help them by, putting all of it in a book. And I have groups on Facebook, the 8th house group and the 12th house group, and people, I've about 15,000 members in there, and they share their charts and their stories, and all these common patterns that I'm sharing with you now, they validate that for me. I recently asked to look at 30 charts of 12th house people, and just random, and I looked at the 5 patterns, and out of let's say 50 charts, 49 out of 50 charts, they met all of the patterns. They said yes, they had them all.
Wow.
And so to me, that's research, because a lot of astrology and intuition and psychic, all of these things that we're talking about, there's not a lot of research on it. People think it's silly. They don't believe in it, but it's a science, and there is research. There's a lot of research about it. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to show that this is a science. This isn't just, making up stuff. Right.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
not like just let's go online, read your horoscope.
yeah, exactly.
More than that.
There's a lot more.
Have you ever thought, Carmen, and thank you for writing that book, because there's not a lot of content on the 8th and the 12th. Have you ever thought about writing a book for kids?
I have, that
kids who have
yes.
intuition and struggling with it and not knowing what to do with it.
Yes, my next book, I was just talking to a friend of mine. It's funny you brought it up, that I want to write a children's book in a very basic way, where it teaches them about their sign and about these things, but in a childlike way, where it's not scary,
Right.
And that's,
and just validates what you're feeling, what the kid is feeling, that
yes.
it's okay to talk about it. This can happen. You may see things, you may feel things, you may suspect something,
and know things. It's interesting, because with my daughter, I raised her to believe and to be open-minded about things, right? But I wanted her to be intuitive, not, because no one ever, if you don't have a parent that understands these things, or they're afraid of these things, they're not going to nurture your spiritual gifts. So a lot of people with 12th and 8th house planets, they didn't trust themselves, because they weren't raised to nurture, their natural born abilities, as angels and phoenixes, as I call them. And so as they get older, they learn to trust their intuition. They realize, wait, I knew that was going to happen, or I knew that I should have listened to myself, right? So they learn through the hard way, through having to have some suffering and some bad things happen in life to kind of wake them up. And then they're like, you know what? I'm trusting my intuition now, and I know I'm right. And then they really start growing as stronger people. So it's kind of like, it's amazing though, if you can start young. I have a lot of parents that do reach out and want to know for their teens, hey, what's going on with, and I'll say, hey, they got 12th house, 8th house. This is what I recommend. And the parents like, oh my gosh, that's them. And they're sensitive, and they lack boundaries. How do I help them? And I'm like, teach them to have boundaries, teach them to say no, that it's okay. You don't have to help everyone, because people with 12th house planets, they want to take on the problems of the world. And what that can do is make them depressed, and it can make them struggle, right? And so they have to learn that they don't have to save everyone. They have to be practical. They got to be in the spiritual, be spiritual, but be spiritual in a practical way. That's kind of one of the hardest lessons with the 12th house, is living in the real world and balancing the spiritual and the practical side of life.
So now you're making me think, because you took a look at my stats, I guess did a chart, and now I can't remember if I, had more in the 8th or the 12th, because now what you're talking about, like, I got to get the book, and I got to figure out,
Yeah.
I got to figure me out.
You have
us.
a little bit of both. You do. You got that eighth. You got 8th house. You definitely have 8th house. Your south node, I remember, is in the 8th house. So you have mastered being a phoenix, Steve. You have gone through a lot of change in past lifetimes. Is the south node, and you've been a natural psychologist. So when you were born, you would see through the truth, and very perceptive about what was going on in your life and with people. You're very good at seeing through people and seeing what was really going on in your environment. And people may say no, you'd see something, and they know that, and you would know.
So I want to share something with you. And I had a Reiki session about a week ago.
Yeah.
And after the session, the practitioner recorded some audio. And the session, Reiki, you don't even have to be connected to the practitioner.
That's right.
I was just laying on my couch with the lights out and a candle burning, and that was it. And the stuff that she told me afterwards is just what you're saying. And what she did say was, you have a ton of intuition. Your third eye, which is the one where you're able to figure things out and see things, and maybe even see a little bit of the future. She goes, it's mucked up. It's clogged up. However, she said you make up for it by using, and I think it was the 5th chakra. And I'm bringing this up because she said what you said. She said that I can spot the truth. I can spot BS. I can see through people and figure it out.
Yes.
And my intuition, I make up for it that way, whereby the third eye isn't working the way it technically should. And maybe we can clear the energy out, but just what you said.
Yes.
I can spot BS.
Yeah, you can. And you also draw people that have problems, that because you have, your energy is very healing. So people are drawn to your energy. And I don't know if you noticed this since even your younger days, through teenage years, you probably attracted people that wanted to share very intense, deep things with you. Like, you may be in the grocery store and someone comes up, my dad just died, or I lost my child, like very deep, transformative things, which is 8th house, because your soul has been an 8th houser. Yeah. And you've got planets there. And that's the same with me. I got a lot of planets in the 8th. And so I'm like, why do people, I mean, it's very, things you normally don't want to talk about, people share with us.
What you do, and you're in the, you work as, I think, counselor, not a social counselor. Okay.
Yeah. Social work. Yeah.
That's kind of what you do. And then you're in the 8th as well.
Yes. Right? I became a counselor because everybody was coming up to me, sharing all these things with me. And I thought, well, maybe I need to be a counselor. And that's kind of what got me into this, because I was helping people anyway, listen to all their problems. Right. So I did. I wanted to be able to have tools to know what to say, and astrology became one of my tools, because it started to verify why I was the way I was, and why I attracted people that would share these deep things with me. And now nothing shocks me. I mean, people,
oh my gosh.
And they know
that all the time. Nothing. And in my journey, which, different journey in the last 3 years, I say that all the time, Carmen. I say, nothing surprises me anymore. Whereby, if I went back 5 years, 10 years, 15 back, something, littlest thing would be like, how am I going to deal with it? What am I going to do? Now it's like, okay, all right, get past that, on to the next thing, Yeah. Wow.
We become adaptable to crisis and change, because we're phoenixes. You're a phoenix. We rise, we're resilient. So we bend, but we just keep going on. And that's 8th housers. They keep surviving through challenges and heartache. And most people then when they share their stories with me, it's unreal, because a lot of people have never experienced some of the things eighth house people have experienced, and they're survivors. I'm like, man, you are so strong. They may not believe they are. They may think, well, and I'm like, do you understand what you have been through? Like,
Mm.
you're amazing, you know, and you're a powerful healer. And then most of them do admit, yes, I do help people, and nothing shocks me. I can hear anything, and they don't react. They don't judge people. You know, eighth house and 12th house people are very compassionate, and they listen, and they don't judge. You know, they just give advice if they can, but they just listen. You're just kind of got an energy that
Yeah.
people want to be around you and share their personal things with you.
And I've been
That's
doing it
yeah.
for decades in radio
Yes.
because we would take calls from listeners, and it was lighthearted, but sometimes a little serious, and then
Sure.
point them in a direction, whereby other listeners, I'd bring everybody together and how are we going to solve this person's problem? And it could be the most ridiculous thing too, for
Sure.
fun
Sure.
sometimes. But do you
Yeah.
find where you are um, positioned within Phoenix in that house that sometimes you just got to put up some walls, even
Oh
even
yeah.
temporarily, because it's all of a sudden it's like the weight of everybody else is on you.
Oh yes. That is one of the things with the eighth house. The 12th house, people have to learn to have boundaries because they're wide open, but they're a little bit naive. 12th house people are more naive and more trusting. Eighth house people have to learn to be more distrusting. They have to learn to have um, shut people out and to be able to cut people off that are unhealthy for them.
Mm.
And because we draw people that aren't always healthy and that treat us the best. Sometimes we can get taken advantage of or betrayed or feel like we're being used. And
Yes,
that's one of the wounds of the eighth house, is that's the trauma I was talking about. There's usually some type of trauma through relationships, parent
you're
relationships,
right. But
trusting
but
someone. Yeah.
but even like if I can spot the BS, if
Yeah.
I'm connected with somebody um close in a very close
Oh yeah.
relationship, then I guess it's kryptonite. I
I know,
know,
right?
I'm like, Jeff, you
Yeah.
got me. You got me good because I didn't see
That's
that coming. Based on what you
yeah.
just said, I saw a quote from Bob Marley. I don't know if I ever shared this, but and
No,
it
no.
was recently I saw it, and it kind of resonates with what you just said. And it's love all, trust few. And
Oh,
that one's a hard one to swallow, but when you think about it, makes sense. Do
uh-huh.
do wrong to none. So
I
love
like
all,
that.
trust few, do wrong to none.
I
Uh,
love that.
and it
That's eighth
kind of,
house.
I would have never even thought about the, trust few because I'm like, well, trust everybody until no.
No, no, eighth house Scorpio, and people with a lot of Scorpio, they learn that the hard way, and then they are a little bit more cautious of who they trust, and
Yeah.
that's the thing why eighth house and people and Scorpios typically, you'll tell them everything. They'll want to tell us everything, but we don't always reveal anything about ourselves because we've been burned, so we're cautious about sharing deep things unless we know that person's loyal and trustworthy. Then we want deep relationships and connections with people, but because of the wounds we have, we tend to be a little bit more
Mm,
private and selective. Let me say that.
yeah.
I'm that way. I don't. I mean, I'm acquaintances. I got a lot of people that I talk to, and they, it's not really deep. They don't know me deeply, though. They
Yeah.
know, a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. You only open the door when you need to. We're out of
That's right.
time.
Oh
I
wow.
thought that went so fast, and I even double checked.
Yes.
I'm like, can that even be possible? But
Oh,
it
was
is.
it? Oh my gosh.
Um, Fantastic concept for a book. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Phoenix and Angels, how do we find it? Is it on your website?
Yes. Yes, Phoenixes and Angels. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can go to my website, carmenturnerschott.com, to my books page, and the links for all of my books are on there. I have other books as well, but this is my newest book, Phoenixes and Angels. I really want to get the word out. If you want to know more, if you have plants here, you can go on my website. I can send you a chart or go to astro.com. And if you have planets here, I think you would like my book.
Yeah. And I guess it could start with just looking at your chart and see if you're landing in the
Yeah.
eighth and the 12th. And then, like I
Yeah.
said, it'll help you figure you out. And
Yes.
once you do, it's like, well, now that's making sense. Oh, that's making sense. Carmen, great talking with you today. Really
You too.
appreciate it.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.